I'm Mike LaCorte. I'm a private professional investigator. Let's answer your questions from the internet. This is Private Investigator Support. Feisty Potential 3392. What is the most interesting case you have ever solved? A client of ours was being blackmailed. This individual had a mistress, and that information would have been devastating to him if his family found out. And whilst morally that's wrong, blackmail is a criminal offence too. The first thing he wanted was this problem to go away, and he was willing to pay for the problem to go away. His mistress's computer was compromised, and some of the data on that was being printed and shared with the client and left on his car. We started to put an investigation together. We used a combination of forensics on the computer to try and see if we could get leads from the hack. We swept the address and the vehicles to make sure there were no listening devices. In the end, we identified the blackmailing group. A couple of the individuals who were behind it ended up being deported. That was a testing time for all of us because it pushed our investigation boundary to its maximum. You've got a client on the one hand that's potentially done something that's immoral in terms of the way he lives his personal life, and then you've got a criminal activity that's taking place trying to extort and blackmail the client for personal gain. JNK 456, when you are hired to find out if a spouse is cheating, what percentage of the time are they actually cheating? When there is a niggling doubt with someone, generally there's something going on. In order for someone to make that decision to hire an investigator, there's got to be some type of issue, breach, untrust that's happened. More are actually cheating than not because spouses will do some groundwork themselves internally first. And it's pretty even in terms of male, female coming to us in terms of being the client. Let's put that figure anywhere between 70 to 75%. For the love of zero, has anyone caught you investigating them? Look, in the private sector, this can happen, but every professional investigator out there will take every step they can to make sure it doesn't happen. Every investigator out there will grade their targets from white to red, white being completely unaware, right up to the level of awareness of an individual increasing potentially during an investigation. If a subject, their awareness increases, you need to then adapt the way you investigate. Sometimes it's more risk-free being overt to be covert. Everyone's got cameras, so it's easier to get a camera out and film rather than try and do something hidden. One of the cases many years ago had to get some imagery of these individuals that shouldn't be together, and it was another infidelity case. And we managed to set up a reporting type scenario with a camera on a tripod, someone holding a microphone, allegedly from a reporting outlet in Leicester Square, and just asking tourism comments. We approached the target, who's with the third party, and passed the microphone between the two, engaged in conversation and asked, how long have you been together? And all of that was documented overtly on a camera. That's an example of sometimes overt to be covert. This one's from It's VSN, random 4 a.m. thoughts. What are the things private investigators can and cannot do? Things investigators can do, they can put surveillance teams on the ground to follow someone. They can run background reports and check for bugs, tracking devices. An investigator cannot go into someone's information in their phones or anything like that. A private sector investigator cannot hack into emails, that's illegal. Go into people's bank accounts, anything that's considered private data, an investigator cannot do that. This is from Factoid80. You're letting people in on the game. Hiring a PI is essential before getting married. I always recommend a deep background check and a fiance test, which is to let her know you're traveling for a weekend, and on that weekend, hire a PI for surveillance. You don't want to try and test your fiance. Where's the trust if there's the test? If you want to try and find out the truth, you hire an investigator. But it needs to be proportionate. From Peony Lily, you're a private investigator detective. What is your outfit and weapon? Most investigators will carry some type of change of clothing or items that can change their appearance pretty quick. Glasses, hats, scarf. During COVID, masks were issued everywhere, and it was a godsend for all the surveillance operatives throughout the world. I always tell my investigation team it's easier to dress down than dress up. If you are smartly dressed, you can always take your tie off, take your jacket off, put a jumper on, put a beanie hat on. In the back of any surveillance vehicle in the boot, you'll see a variety of different types of clothing. If you want to change your appearance completely. Never forget your shoes, because that's one item that investigators can miss in changing. This is from Ask Reddit. Private investigators of Reddit, what is the most bizarre task you've been assigned to do? I was contacted a while ago by a celebrity photographer. This photographer was in a relationship with someone from a band. The person in the band was lent a very famous guitar. The objective was to trace the guitar and bring it back to its rightful owner. The individual declined all knowledge of it, but we had proof otherwise. I had to travel back to the US with this famous guitar on my back, with some of the stewardesses thinking I was part of some famous band. Bizarre case. From Red Seymour, what made you decide to become a private investigator? What was your most fun case? I started on the ground, doing inquiries, field work, surveillance work. It just intrigued me. This industry consumed me, actually. It was something I'm super interested in, and I've always have been intuitive and understanding and uncovering facts and the diversity in terms of what a private investigator actually does. A fun case that we worked on was a few years ago, a family office where the female was suspected of having an affair with her ski instructor. It was in a very popular ski resort where we needed to put a ski surveillance team together. Where and how would the target behave inappropriately during the time she's with the instructor? I tell you, when that task hit the office, most investigators put their hand up for that, because it was a good few days skiing and you had to be quite competent. She was pretty good. So the end result of the ski task was no, there was no infidelity going on, probably paranoia from the client's point of view. For the surveillance team, it was a great few days skiing paid for, so I think they enjoyed that. This is from Aggressive AD8587. How are private investigators legal? Lots of countries around the world, investigators need to be licensed in order to practice. In the UK, an established private investigator that's a member of accredited associations is registered with the ICO, has insurance, and is DPA checked, is legal to practice. You need to make sure what you're doing is proportionate and necessary, because when you present your reports to the court, you can't say you've followed someone for a year in a way to try and catch someone out on that one occasion. This one is from Reddit, or forget it. Private detectives of Reddit, what's your oh shit moment where you had to stop watching and either step in or call the police? My biggest oh shit moment was we were working a case years ago where there was internal fraud. It was for a bathroom suppliers company, and there was lots of items going missing. We knew where goods were going missing from. Let's say this is our client's warehouse. We had an agent parked in a car park at this position here. Now, unbeknown to us, is the team were taking goods out here in the vans and using the same car park here to move them into different vehicles. He was actually blocked in by the vans when they were moving goods from the client's van into their own van. If you do get spotted, it will ruin the operation that we've been working on for weeks and weeks. He can't drive himself out of there. The other agent cannot walk up to the vehicle and drive him out. We just have to monitor the situation and let it run its course. The agent was fine. He stayed in the vehicle until the vans moved on, and that vehicle was never used in the surveillance again. This one's from Grey Blue Eyes. What are your must-have apps, sites that are always available at your fingertips? In this day and age, any type of communication tool, it'd be very difficult to operate as an investigator without being able to capture and communicate. Do I have a discrete car? Yes, vehicles will be nondescript, and there's a lot of planning that goes into a type of surveillance vehicle that's used before it's out on the ground. With hidden audio and video devices, technology has changed dramatically since I first started. We were carrying backpacks with battery packs and big Filofax cameras back in the day. Many people associate investigators with binoculars, for example, with technology. And now there are a monocular, which is small, single-handed, that's digital, that can capture and record huge distances and transmit that information live. This is from Poogies. What would actually happen if you hired two private investigators to follow each other? I think that's an impossible scenario. And just think about it. Investigator A goes and sits outside Investigator B's house, waiting for him to come out. And Investigator B goes and sits outside Investigator A's house, waiting for him to come out. So if they're following each other, then they're going to be both watching empty houses. Question from Mill Group 2001. What's the hardest thing about being a private investigator? I suppose the hardest thing about being a private investigator is you don't switch off. It consumes you. It consumes your time, your thoughts, your processes. It's a way of life rather than just a job. But a case that come and hit the desk, it was working for a financial institution in the city, and our objective was to find the address that this individual is living at after a meeting. I remember calling my wife as many years ago saying, I'll be home for dinner. The guy left, went into St. Pancras train station, got on the Eurostar, ended up in Paris for the weekend. So my 2 or 3 hour surveillance turned into a whole weekend. If you are not fully committed to a way of life as an investigator, then maybe this career isn't for you. This question is from Jersor. What do real private detectives usually investigate? It could be consented cases like pre-employment checks, so screening staff for positions in work, right up to fraud, supporting lawyers for court cases, gathering information and evidence that can be used for decision-making, brand protection, investigating fakes that are out there for some of the brands, matrimonial, where you believe a partner is being unfaithful, or cohabitation, where a partner has moved into another address with someone else, proving that for a particular reason. But what investigators or private detectives do is uncover the truth. The risky Marie, what possessed you all to hire a private investigator? Like, how does this even work? We're a distressed purchase. People don't book us like you book a holiday. People come to us when they have a problem and they need to either find the truth or find the facts or connect the dots. We cover a wide range of services, from tracing individuals right up to, corporate fraud and intelligence gathering. But private clients, they come to us commonly when they've either been scammed, there's an internal family office issue, or there's a breach of trust, an unfaithful partner, a family member that's gone astray. This is from Candy Emergency. How can I tell if my car has a tracking device? In order to conclusively tell, you'd need to do what's called a technical sweep. You'd have a skilled technical investigator with the right equipment that will scan the vehicle, do 2 types of searches: a physical search, going underneath in the engine, in any of the compartments, and then the vehicle scanned with some equipment that will look for emitting signals or frequencies or what have you to try and identify whether a tracking device is on that car. Todd Orland 56032. What do you think is the most critical skill for a private investigator to have? Leaving no layer unturned. So being intuitive and drilling down into the detail and the data, questioning everything that you find and you see, and verifying all of the sources of information that you uncover. Having that out of the box thinking mentality to tackle cases and analyze a case in more than one dimension makes you a complete investigator. This one's from Red's Playpin. How the hell do I hire a private investigator? Good question, this. Depending on the country you're in, you look at your local or your state, national or international association. In the UK, there's the Association of British Investigators. Check on that website for an accredited and approved investigator there. Globally, a good starting point would be the World Association of Detectives. There's nearly 1,000 investigators on that platform in more than 80 countries around the world. This one is from AuthorNerd911. Thinking of becoming a private investigator. Thoughts? Well, my first answer to that, I think it's a great idea. I would align yourself with some professional associations like the Association of British Investigators. I'd look for potential internships and apprenticeships for entry-level investigator to give you an insight into the world of private investigating and whether it's for you. This one's from Avocado of Destiny. What general tips would you give to people to lower their profile a little bit and be a bit harder to trace, thinking along the lines of stalker or identity thieves? From a picture, you can find out so much about someone without knowing them. Lots of dotting parents posting pictures of their kids outside their school with the school badge or the school sign behind. Very easy for, nefarious characters online to understand which schools your kids are going to. And just your private data, the home addresses, personal data. We've got 2 reputations now. Everyone has. You've got your personal reputation in terms of the reputation you have with your friends, colleagues and family. But you've also got your online reputation too. You need to protect both. This is from Evelyn FM. What is the most shocking case you've worked on? The client was a banker from the Middle East. He wanted to try and locate his child, and his estranged wife was going through a very messy divorce. Thought they were still somewhere in the Middle East. We ended up tracing them to somewhere in the US, and the client was adamant that it couldn't be. So we sent some field investigators out there, took some images, showed him, and he was gobsmacked. He couldn't believe it. We were able to prove that the mother forged his signature on the consent to leave. In the end, the father actually received custody of his child. From Solanges Fro, who is the better detective, Sherlock Holmes or Benoit Blanc? Mr. Blanc is more suited currently. However, if we were to bring Mr. Blank back in Sherlock Holmes times, then Sherlock Holmes would win hands down. Modern investigators sometimes can be a bit lazy. Some Sherlock Holmes techniques, getting out there, speaking to people, doing the covert questioning, statements, that type of field work to supplement whatever you've found through all of your data sets can be overlooked by some modern detectives. Doing the field work in combination with what you can do at your fingertips makes you a complete investigator. So we've got a question here from Shuffleuppagus. Question for private investigators. What's a typical day look like for you? There's no two typical days that are the same because you do such a wide range of investigating. It could be desktop research, it could be interrogating databases, it could be looking at open source intelligence, that's information that's freely available on the net, or it could be getting out on the field, asking questions, maybe doing some covert surveillance, interviewing, door knocking, neighbours. Just really does depend on the case that you've been assigned to and the objective. I hope I've answered all of your questions from the internet. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.